Stories are an extremely rich resource for primary RE, both in terms of learning about and learning from religion. But ARIAC, the Association of RE Inspectors, Advisors and Consultants, have suggested that the use of story is not always as effective as it could be. Julie Grove, a former head of ARIAC and author of a number of books on the use of story, is one person trying to remedy this.
Story is important because it is the raw material of religion. It's the way in which religious ideas are communicated. Stories have a very rich and important function in helping children to look at their own lives, as well as learning about religious traditions that they may not be familiar with.
Julie's workshop explores the importance of religious stories and looks at how they can help develop a deeper level of religious understanding. It also offers practical storytelling techniques designed to give you the confidence and know-how needed to tell better stories and maximise their effect. Taking part are 4 primary teachers from a cross-section of London schools.
The purpose for today is to look at and explore why do we use religious story? What does it do for children? What are the kind of techniques that we can develop that will help us to do that?
Today I was looking for opportunities to help these teachers to get beneath the surface, to understand that religious stories are more than maybe they appear. It's just having the confidence to leave the script behind and enjoy living the story yourself.
Isabel, I wonder if you'd like to just have a feel of what's underneath this and say one thing about it.
There's 2 pieces out the sides which make me think that they're arms.
It's very important that teachers offer a broad and a balanced curriculum in religious education, and that means going to a whole range of sources for stories. That demands some preparation.
Sarah, come and have a feel.
It's hard but soft on the outside.
So it's hard but soft on the outside.
Yeah.
Go to the most original source that you have access to and explore that story for yourself. What issues does it raise for you as a teacher, and what might it raise for your children?
It's Ganesh.
It's Ganesh. And Ganesh is a Hindu deity. And I'm going to tell you the story of how he got his elephant head. In order to help us to find the story, we're going to light the story candle.
I used the candle as markers for coming into and going out of the story. So they effectively were signals to say you can live this story for however long we live in the story, and then at the end of it, we go away.
I think a good way was the use of the candle to end and begin the story, just so that they know that obviously we're coming into this story setting and then we can also come away from it.
Shiva was very angry, so angry that he took out his weapon and he cut off the little boy's head.
Reading stories is very important, and those words will be remembered. But they don't have the power, if they're read, that they have if they are told.
Shiva was very sorry. He promised Parvati that he would find a new head. So he did just that. He killed the elephant, he cut off its head, and he carried it back, and he put it onto Ganesha's body. I hope that you learned something about Ganesh there. I've got some bits of information for you, different for each one of you. If you read your information and decide what are the 2 most important points.
The most productive questions will not be about the story, it will be about the issues that the story raises and children's responses to those issues. Even if children are only invited to think rather than to talk, that still is very, very important and valuable.
What have you learned that you didn't know before about Ganesh?
It's quite clever, the idea of the creator and the created through being the human body, but the greater of the animal, the elephant head, represents the greater being.
I didn't know that the rat represented the evil.
What about using stories like that?
If this is a faith story, then I'm not sure where you go with that, because the people who believe it's true, don't they?
The people who believe in Ganesh, who hold Ganesh to be sacred, would hold the story to be sacred.
You need to safeguard children. If you're going to encourage them to be intimate with a story, then you also need to safeguard their integrity.
I often find that the children are very willing to share their own experiences, and especially from their own faith backgrounds. And as soon as one would start talking about, oh yes, we have this at home, others will begin to chip in and share their experiences.
So you may have a Hindu child talking about belonging to Ganesh, and that might prompt a child from another tradition, a Muslim child, for instance, to say, well, I belong to God, but what I do is to read a book. I read the Quran to show that I belong to God.
If we're talking about a story from Islam, for instance, you might say for Yasin, this is a story of faith, but there will be issues coming out of that story which you, as whatever, can respond to.
I think stories are always a good way to initiate discussion with the children, and somehow, especially very young children, seem to be good at bringing it back to themselves and saying, I do it like this, or we do this.
What we have here is a way which we can legitimately call religious education, of raising, helping children to raise and confront issues which might be quite difficult. And they might be PSE type issues, but actually we're using the religious material and giving it the initiative.
When there are enormous issues for some children to deal with, story is a way of exploring some of those issues more safely than talking directly about them.
You wouldn't feel the need to have it in a context and build upon it, or as part of something. It could just be a story and complete in itself.
It could be, but you might want to link it with a learning theme.
Yes.
You might have a learning theme that is to do with animals.
Yes, I was wondering.
And this would be a legitimate religious story about an aspect of what some people believe God might be like, which has those animal aspects. Out of that shared experience, what would you say are some of the principles of using story with children? Let's think about the power of the story and what it did.
It took you through different emotions. So you connected with people, and then it took you through the emotions with them.
So the emotional aspect of the story is a very important one. What was it that made that come out?
Partly the way you told it, because the way you paused and built up a suspense.
So timing is what you're saying. Timing is important.
Using the word I wonder and that sort of language rather than direct questions. And you're reflective in that way. It gives you time to think and put yourself in that position.
And it also says, I haven't got a prejudged idea about what you're going to say.
You need to know the story.
You need to know the story. And you will generate that impact through eye contact with your listeners.
A definite difference between reading and telling, because I think when you're telling the story, you've definitely got more eye contact with the children, and they're engaged as well, waiting, like anticipating to see what happens in this story.
Create some prompts. This might be a prompt for you. It can be helpful for children too. Another way is a mind map. So this is the way that I remember stories, to map them in this way and to use colour if the colour is appropriate. So on there, the watery bits are blue, and certainly use every opportunity to be dramatic, to think about your voice, to modulate it, to have pauses and so on. If I could have carried it, I might have brought my story hoop, because we're a small group, and I might have given you a ribbon to hold so that you could physically be in touch with the story.
But would you use that only with religious stories?
Yes, I would, because I think that says something about the story. In my experience, children then sometimes have been heard to say, are we going to have a candle story? And they know, because the association is made, that this is a story, and it's often a story about God. This is a story from the Christian tradition to come to us. The story of Noah. The Lord saw that the wickedness of humankind was great in the earth. This is a sign of my covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. Now then, a task for you. In your pairs, decide who's A and who's B. A's, you're going to be the storytellers. B's, your listeners. Think about the questions that you might ask if you were the storytellers. So you just need to swap places.
At the end of the story it says it will never happen again, so I thought we could connect that with the children as, you know, when they've been naughty or something.
There's quite a lot of content within it, so it'd be quite tricky to do all of it as a whole snapshot.
No, you haven't had very long to prepare this, but think about getting into the story and feeling it. Feel the story as you share it.
There was once a man. His name was Noah. And he had a special friend.
I enjoyed retelling the story. It is all about being a part of the story and living it to get the main points across.
And that new start would come from their family.
Well done. How might you have told it differently from the way that Isabel told it?
I think you could have told it from God's point of view.
You could have told it from God's point of view, yes. Children can think, even very young children can begin to think theologically if the story material is shared with them in an appropriate way. What are you taking away from today?
I think using questions and thinking of your questions beforehand, just to direct maybe the children's thinking a little bit, and also giving them a scope to the discussion maybe after the story with their own thoughts.
What we're seeking to do is to go beneath the surface of the story and offer ways of dealing with issues. My final word would be, it's the most wonderful experience when you have listeners in the palm of your hand. So go away and enjoy doing it.